Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of alignful.com. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really grateful to have you all here today. And today we have another wonderful episode, and I'm continuing on with our high vibe conversation series. And we're talking to one of my fellow coaches and friends, Elizabeth Ralph. And she is a money manager and high-level business coach. She's also the founder of Financial Story, the place where entrepreneurs transform from unsure investor to badass money manager. I love that so much. And I have participated in her program, and I can attest to all of that. What's cool about Elizabeth is she is formerly a financial executive and energy trader. And she shifted her focus entirely in 2012. She says, while feeding Cheetos to a kangaroo on a beach in Australia, she realized that in order to fulfill her purpose of saving unwanted horses, she needed to break free from the confines of the corporate world. Oy, I feel ya. So right then and there, she decided to go all in and set up a strategy to achieve financial freedom within 10 years. The result, the Financial Story framework, was born, and so was the amazing horse property that she and her wife call Give Grass Ranch. Oh, I just totally got shivers. She is so amazing, and what Elizabeth does, well, first of all, this plan of financial freedom in 10 years, she basically retired herself by the age of 39. Holy smokes, I think that's so cool. And she talks about something that's just so different. It's called financial intuition. And that's why I wanted to have her on this podcast. Obviously, this isn't a business podcast and it's not a financial podcast, but to the circumstances right now and to everything that's going on, I thought you all may appreciate this financial take on what's going on and what you can do to manage your finances regardless of what level of income you are at or what your circumstances right now. Toward the end of the episode, she gives a really amazing and simple kind of 3-step process of things you can start to do right now with your money to set yourself up for future wealth and to really start to lean into your own intuition as it comes to managing your money and determining what the purpose is for your money so you can build a future that you really, really are aligned with. So that is this week's episode. I cannot wait for you guys to listen. And again, it's a longer interview, so it's always nice to take it on a walk with you to get your vitamin D, probably wearing a mask, or if you are on a Sunday drive, because that's the only way we can leave the house these days. Without further ado, here's this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. I'm super, super excited this week because we are continuing our high vibe conversation series. If you listened to last week's episode, I had a conversation with Candace James, and it was just an introduction to you guys of like how all the amazing people that I am surrounded by and what types of conversations we actually have on a regular basis. And it's available to all of us. We really have the ability to change and shift our vibration so that we attract the type of people that we want and need in our lives. And I am so blessed to be surrounded by so many amazing people and fellow coaches like who I have this week, which is Elizabeth Ralph. And she is also a James Wedmore coach with me, but she is a magical financial whiz. And she talks about a really interesting concept called financial intuition that we will talk about on this episode. But again, these are things she and we have been able to have these conversations separately. I've been a part of her program, and I really wanted to bring her on so you guys can actually have an understanding of what we can do with our finances right now, how to make them not so scary, and really honor what is coming up. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. I just think the absolute world of you. Every time you and I get together, I keep telling you, oh my gosh, to me, you're like a light. That's like every time I think of you and I want to describe you, I'm like, she's a light. So it is no surprise that you have attracted amazing people in your life, that you are, like you said, you're surrounded by all of these people. We're drawn to you as well. So thank you for initiating this and for having me on.
Oh, yay. Yeah, we totally fangirl each other. I love Elizabeth, and you guys will pick up on this in the call. I love her energy. She's so grounded, so calm and collected, which I really seek in other people. And she's really connected to, in terms of the bigger picture, right? And energy and vibration. So she takes the science of finance and all the really specific ways that we talk about finance, and then brings it into this kind of realm that we talk about on the podcast that can be considered more woo-woo. Elizabeth, how would you describe it actually really well, how you do the crossover of your 2 points of view?
Yeah. So I have a background in finance. I had a 12-year career working in corporate finance. I was an energy trader. I designed financial products for large companies like Walmart, Target, all of that. So what I did is I decided a long time ago that I wanted to sort of buy my way out of corporate, if you will. So I said, okay, let me put a strategy together for this. So I did, but then I realized that it's not just about that. It's also about bringing in your purpose and integrating that into the overall picture, right? Because if we just go out there and we put a financial strategy together and it has no meaning to it, then it becomes really difficult, almost to the point about 3 years into it, I felt myself getting really depressed. Actually, I was on course, but I hadn't merged actually my intuition with the financial strategy. And once I figured that out and I was able to sort of bring those two together, for me, my purpose was, I felt very strongly about helping horses. So that became sort of the momentum behind my financial strategy and got me through, I guess you'll call it, those dark days when it gets really difficult. So through this process, I was actually able to leave corporate. But then once I did, I started seeing there's a big, in my mind, I see it as a divergence out there going on right now, where you have financial advisors who do a really good job of helping people invest. And then you have, on the other side, you have people who I don't want to say, I guess I will use the word distrust. There's a lot of distrust because a lot of things have gone on within the financial industry. So then you have all these people who they want to manage their money. They want to amplify their money. They're interested in it. They don't necessarily want to be like a stock expert, but they want to know how to build assets and generational wealth. Yet they don't want to go out there and hire people that they don't know, trust, or even can speak the language for, right? Like a lot of people, they hire people to help them manage their money, but they don't even feel comfortable asking them questions. And so my whole solution to this is, well, how can we tap into our own financial intuition? How can we actually learn a lot of these concepts and bring that in? Because at the end of the day, financial intuition is deliberate creation with money. But that's what all of these financial people that you hire are trying to do as well. So if we can merge these two worlds, almost like money mindset meets real world finance, if we can merge these two things, then I think going forward, this gives people a powerful solution to take advantage of opportunities, especially now, because we're going to see huge opportunities coming up because of what we're going through now in the market. We're going to see huge opportunities coming up. So I really think that people who can position themselves and start to tap into that financial intuition, that knowing, right? Like we go out there and we know that we can go out there and make money, but why do we feel like we can't manage it once we get it? I want to fix that. I want to really help people with that, because people do have the ability to tap into their own intuition when it comes to money. But it requires, as you and I talk about in the group, it requires knowledge, confidence, layering it in, and as you said, positioning yourself, right? Like being ready to take advantage of that opportunity.
Oh, yes. That's so good. And I can just hear your passion in how you talk about that. And it lights me up because, so everyone, I mean, what she's describing, I really had spent a lot of time up until this year trying to work through my own money mindset. But never did I really think there was anything for me beyond just like fixing my own money mindset. I didn't really think that I was someone who could hire a financial advisor, because to me, that is something for people who make a lot of money, right? And it was like all these big, scary things, and it felt overwhelming. And I was like, no, I just need to understand my money mindset, and then everything will be fixed. But what I learned through working with you was, one, oh my gosh, this world does not have to be scary. And it almost feels like it is made to be scary to keep, Joe Schmo out of the industry. And I realized through working with you that it can be kind of fun. And when we work with our energy and our intuition, it totally shifts the game and what it actually means to manage your finances and to be intentional, not just like I save all my money and I don't have a quote bad money mindset, but rather like I actually have an understanding of what my money can do for me, even if I'm not making a ton of money in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I'm glad you hit upon that, because I think a lot of people feel like they need to be making a lot of money before they join the game. But in reality, if you think about it like, okay, so you're watching a sports game. And so imagine you are watching a soccer game and you see it all laid out in front of you and you're seeing all the players and you want to be in that game. You just wish that you could be in that game. You're sitting in the stands. Well, imagine if the coach literally came up and picked you out of the crowd and said, "Are you ready to play?" Well, you wouldn't be ready to play unless you had practiced. You wouldn't be ready to play unless you learned the rules of the game. You wouldn't even be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And so that's exactly what people do when it comes to their money. They wait, wait, wait. And then these opportunities arise and they're not positioned well enough to take advantage of them. And then that further exacerbates it, because then they think, that's further evidence, right? Oh, well, that's not for me. When in reality, it has nothing to do with the amount of money. Because if you can get yourself positioned and you can put $100 into something and you get $25 back, then you've entered the game. And that's really all that it takes.
Yes, that's such a good analogy too. And you know what came up when you were saying that is I was also picturing for some reason like the high stakes poker game. So the poker games that have like the $50,000 buy-in. Well, someone who hasn't played like blackjack with, $5, $1 bills isn't just going to suddenly step into the high ticket table where he or she could make a ton of money. And the stakes are higher, but if you know what you're doing, it's a lot more helpful. But you have to practice, you have to start somewhere. And I think, we've been taught maybe even unintentionally that unless you're making a lot of money, there's no point. And it's like, just have your 401k and move on with your life. Just try to get through. And what you've taught me is it doesn't matter so as my income increases, right, it doesn't matter where it is now, but I start putting these practices into place. Like you said, $100 here, $25 there, deciding what things I want my money to do for me in the future and giving my money a purpose. And that's what you described with you realized, you really want to help horses. And so you suddenly had this bigger why than I just need to make more money. And that for me was the biggest difference from working with you was I went from always feeling like I just need to make more money. I just need to make more money. Even though evidence of my past, I've made a ton of money and I've made very little. And yet I seem to always be in the same state with my finances. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized through working with you, it's because I didn't have a why. Like, well, why do I need more money? What do I want my money to do for me? Will I allow myself to dream for something bigger? And all of that has shifted through tapping into like my own intuition, like you talked about, and also just getting clear, like, this is for me also.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad that sort of came together for you in the program, because there's, I think it's twofold. It's definitely pinpointing what is our momentum, what is our purpose. And it is also, it requires a bit of forgiveness as well. And I don't know if you remember, like how we kind of started out was, um, everybody up to this stage, everybody's making the best decisions that they can based on the knowledge that they have, right? And so a lot of people, I think, they don't do things like this because they feel like, well, I should have done a better job so far, right? There's almost like this element of guilt that goes into it that precludes them from doing it because, and I don't think the financial industry understands that well enough, right? Because the financial industry has a tendency to say, well, people just aren't educated. Well, I don't think that's it because anybody can go on Google and look up how to open an IRA. But the reason they don't open the IRA is because they feel so bad about why they haven't done it already. And so I think what you're tapping into and what you're talking about is the money mindset stuff side of it, right? And like even though you had a good money mindset, it was about then what's that next step and how to put those pieces together afterwards.
Yes, exactly. Because I'd spent years trying to kind of work through my money mindset, which is a forever process, I believe. But it was like, well, now what do you do with that? And you're right. Not only guilt, but I sense a lot of shame. And I certainly had shame around my money, like shame around debt, shame around not doing things right, shame around, shoulda, shoulda, shoulda. And you really helped kind of shift that because we know as coaches, right? If we have a story about something, that story in itself will prevent us from taking action. So it's like, draw the line right here. Up until this point, you were good. Release the shame, release the guilt, and start taking positive action now that's going to help you in 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 years. And just that story of shame and you did bad, it doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve the future of your money. And so if we can drop it, everything can start to kind of unfold.
Yes, you're exactly right. It is, it's dropping that, it's lowering the resistance. And ironically, and I'll just go into like this is my belief, right? I believe that the people that are going to do well financially and be able to tap into, building wealth, using assets, taking advantage of the new things we're going to see coming up in the market. I think that the people who are going to be able to do that the best are the ones that drop that resistance, exactly what you were just talking about. Because if you want to have that game advantage, you have to drop that resistance. And that is part of kind of what we're talking about with the financial intuition. Because anytime that you can have an intuitive approach to something, what it allows you to do is you actually see, I'll say, quote, see opportunities that you wouldn't have seen before. And I think that with the, the layering in of financial technology and all of the new businesses that are cropping up and new ways of looking at things, the financial market is no different than the rest of the world. And it's energy too, right? I mean, the market itself is a representation of everyone else out there, right? All of the companies, how they're doing, right? It's really a giant litmus test. And so us being able to read that and sort of bring that into and combine that with what's our purpose? What do we want to see? How do we want our life to look like? And what pieces of this intuitively feel right to me? That is the best absolute win-win situation you can set up.
Yeah. And isn't like, how nice does that feel? And I guess I'm asking this generally to anyone listening, but we're all individuals. So instead of having to buy into the idea of this is what it means, right? You have to invest in the stock market, and the stock market is risky. And if it's now's a bad time, and all of these rules, these black and white, that is really based on fear, I feel. I mean, I can sense it right now when I'm talking to other people. I'm so grateful I'd gone through your program before this. And then you're shifting it and saying, but what feels right for you? If you allow yourself to dream and design the financial future that you want, what feels right for you? What do you feel called to create? Because that energy that's behind that is going to be so much more powerful than the fearful energy that is trying to only listen to the quote experts and just do what they want you to do. And you really help us bring in, okay, well, what will serve me and my vision? What does success mean to me? It might not mean having, 4 homes, or it might not mean traveling around the world. It might just mean having my monthly expenses covered so that, I can play for 60% of the month. So it's really empowering the way you bring that in, because finances can be anything to anyone if you make the choice, right?
That's exactly right. And I love that you brought that up, because I think that people are so disconnected from finance and investing in general that they feel as though that they have nothing else to do except for listen to the experts out there, right? But one of the things that you've heard me say over and over is you never make money following the herd, right? The average, you're never going to make more than the average if you're making decisions based on what you just saw on TV. First of all, that's already the stock price has already gone up because it's already baked into the price, right? By the time that someone sees it on TV, right, it's almost too late, right? And by following the herd, you're always going to make average returns. Now, is that better than not being in the market at all? Of course it is. But there's an even better way to do it if you can combine your momentum, your energy, your purpose. And, this concept of the market being a living, breathing thing, it's interesting because, I study a lot of the, like the old heavy hitter investors, right? What I kind of do is I love like the people like Warren Buffett, and Bogle and Ray Dalio and all of that. And so I like to study all of their fundamentals. And then I like to then bring that in and sort of have a modern approach on that. But I was reading something the other day, and even 50, 60 years ago, they were calling it Mr. Market, right? Because if you see it as just a conglomeration of a lot of things that are going out there, then it doesn't seem so scary. It's not this really complex thing that you need to be good at math and you need to know all of the stocks. And I think that's kind of step one, is to, for people to stop keeping it at an arm's length distance, because it's available to you with the click of a button.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Market. I was chuckling when I heard that. But yeah, and Mr. Market is susceptible to energy, right? Like you said, It's a representation of everyone else. Like he is not on an island by himself.
No, I mean, look at Mr. Market now. I mean, they just did a poll. It just came out actually this morning where they said that 46% of Americans are afraid they're not going to be able to buy food and pay their bills.
Mm.
And so we're seeing that. Of course, that's baked into the market, right? We saw, in between mid-February to today, we actually saw, it's come back up since then, but we saw 35% drop in the market, and it's a rapid drop. And it wasn't all based on economic fundamentals. A lot of it, this is a medical thing that's going on. But we're going to see the economic fundamentals be impacted going forward for sure.
Yeah. Right. Well, Mr. Market's feeling a little down right now.
Mr. Market is not feeling so great right now. Although the stock market's up 1,000 points today, so Mr. Market's feeling a little bit better.
Yeah,
he must have had some good coffee.
Right, exactly, which I just had. It's so interesting as you're bringing it into this conversation, because with all the fear that is happening right now about the market, do you see, and kind of help me with this, do you see that the fear that is just like in the general population is also represented in the market? Or do you think the drop in the market is creating fear in the general population? Is there a correlation? And what can individuals do to either not buy into that energy and or to kind of protect themselves from what's going on?
That is such a great question. Oh my gosh, fantastic question. So I think it's actually a bit of both. I do think that, obviously with the market drop, a lot of that is on fear because the fundamentals were strong in terms of earnings and, companies being very cash rich, all of that beforehand, right? We saw a few indicators last year of how we could be dipping into maybe a little bit of a correction, but the fundamentals didn't hang on long enough for us to really pay attention to them. So really, if you look at what's happened, this is a lot of fear. Also, when anyone sees the market drop like this, then in turn, that adds to the fear that they were already feeling, like you said, right? So, but I think that something that people really aren't aware of. I think that traders and people in the industry are very aware of this, but I don't think that people realize that if you look at the way that the market trades now in comparison to the way the market traded, say, 20 years ago, it's completely different. Just the intrinsic nature of the way that the market is structured now is going to lend itself to more volatility because way back, we were trading individual stocks. So if you think of the stock market, it was going to look a bit more like an EKG. We didn't have robots trading giant blocks of stock, right? It was literally individuals trading, and you could only buy or sell your stock as quick as you could get your advisor on the phone. We didn't have that uniformity into it, right? Now, what we see is we have ETFs and we have now we have robo advisors. We have all of this. So much of our, I'll call it participation in the market, is based on not necessarily buying individual stocks, but participating in these traded funds, right? Electronic traded funds. So what happens is when you go, traders are now trading these in bigger increments. So what you're seeing is it's a bigger drop or it's a bigger increase. So we're seeing a lot more volatility. I don't believe that the individual investor has a good understanding of that. So what they're seeing is, oh my gosh, we've never seen the market drop so quick. Oh my gosh, we've never seen the market come up so quick. And then you see these stock charts come out in the news and they're comparing it to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Well, yes, it is good to compare it, but I think you have to sort of take it with a grain of salt as well.
That is so helpful. And it's like so much of what's going on. We know that media sensationalizes. That's their job. It's okay. But we need to tap into our own energy and be like, okay, is this mine? Is this energy something that I need to freak out about personally? For example, for me, I don't need to freak out about the stock market. I have my IRA, I have my investment accounts, I'm also not retiring anytime
Right.
soon.
Right.
And I can ride the wave. And so I now have that knowledge of, yes, I understand this is what's happening, but personally, it's not going to serve me to buy into the frantic energy of that. Like, I can understand that this can be a problem, and this affects other people. It's not totally about being shut down. But I think for many of us right now, the reason I'm going in this direction is there's so much going on. There's so much media. There's so much social media. There's so many people telling you what to do, what not to do, what's scary, what's bad, what's wrong. And then we're sitting at home, technically okay, a lot of us are,
Mhm.
and then getting so sucked in to all the panic that then us as an individual who is in a probably an okay spot suddenly spirals down this negative trail. And then your negative, worried, fearful energy in your safe space is actually then vibrating out to the collective. And then we're not helping anybody. So it's not
Mhm.
about putting your head in the sand, right? Like, I'm loving following you on Facebook and on Instagram because you're really sharing this information. Like, I agree that we need to know what's going on. But personally, I can't spend my energy worrying about the stock market dropping right now because I've got
Mhm.
other things that I would rather put my energy toward. And I want to help the collective energy and focus on what's working and what I can do and what can affect me versus what is just generally bad according to the media.
Yes, and that's exactly right. And that is absolutely the best thing that you can do, because the thing is right now, the stock market dropping is not necessarily a bad thing, especially for people that are wanting to start investing. Because if you ask anyone out there, okay, do we think that the market is going to come back once we get beyond the peak and once we sort of get things figured out and get our ducks in a row? If you ask anyone what they think, of course, most people would say, oh, yeah, the market's going to come back, even if they think it's going to come back, not all the way, right? Just a little bit, right? So, what does that mean? Well, that means that in general, the consensus out there, the belief, the energy is that we're going to see an uptick in the stock market. So let's forget for a minute that the stock market has gone down and let's pretend that we're just starting at ground zero. If we're starting at ground zero and we know there is a way to invest out there and we believe it's going to go up, then the dollar that we put in today is going to be earning a return. Like, it's almost like looking at it as, yes, this might have felt like a problem, but with every problem, there's an opportunity. And so, right now, for any new money going in, it's an opportunity. And the more new money that you put in is going to, you could even say it's going to help offset before. But like, I like your approach even better, which is, I'm not even going to use that money that I had in there right now, right? I mean, like, even if it takes 5 years for this to come back, right? Which that's kind of like what analysts are estimating is our furthest point right now. They're saying one best case, three, and then five furthest, right? So even if it's 5 years, you're not even going to use the money anyways right now. So there really is nothing to be afraid about. And, just talking about if we looked back at 2008 when we had the financial crisis. So if you had put a dollar in at the peak when the market was absolutely the highest back in 2008, right? If you'd put a dollar in then, it would have taken you 5 years to actually recover that dollar. If you had put a dollar in 2009, when the market was not, didn't even have to get it at its absolute low point, but when the market had dropped, then you would have already doubled that money in 3 years. So you see what I'm saying? Like, I like your approach because it's looking at, well, what are the opportunities going forward, instead of it's doing us no good to look at, okay, what's happened up to this point.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I love how you always bring the stats in because it's really helpful and helpful. Again, it's perspective is very important. And I have a couple kind of follow up questions along those lines. So, because you're talking about, what would have happened had we put $1 in 2009. For people who, I have two different scenarios. So let's start with the first one. For people who are in an okay place right now where perhaps their job hasn't been affected, they can still work even though they're at home and they're even possibly spending less money, right? Because they're not leaving the house and want to start to get into the market. What is it the easiest way for them to buy in now? And what would be some steps or options that they could take if they want to start to build some sort of investment portfolio, and even if they want to start small?
That's a great question. I think the first thing is definitely getting your ducks in a row. So I never recommend that anybody starts investing until they actually get their sort of money dashboard created. So some type of system, ideally it would be something online where you are pulling all of your accounts in, your credit cards, all of your stuff, and you have the ability to run a report that shows what your income and your expenses are, and have that set up for at least 3 months. I mean, I would recommend a year, just so you can see the patterns in your income. Because I think if you look at like a longer snapshot, then that will show you like what those situations are. Like you had to get a new air conditioner, or you had to put tires on your car, or something like that. Like we tend to forget those, right? So that will show that, because you really need to have a good idea of what you do have to invest. Now, also by doing that, you end up finding money to invest that you didn't know was on the table. So that's another reason that I say that's definitely step number one. Because if you've got a subscription on there that you think, you know what, if can I live without this for 3 months, and you just cancel that, and then ask yourself, put it on your calendar, say, well, in 3 months, put it on your calendar for 3 months to ask yourself, do I really want that? Do I need to re-sign up for that? Because it's kind of a different conversation. And you might find out that you don't, right? You can find usually, and we're sort of still testing this within the program, but usually you can find a few $100, right? That you would be able to invest. And Dana, how once you take a few $100s and you start investing it over time, how quickly in terms of compounding that really adds up, and how it ends up being a ginormous amount that, you've sort of forgotten about, right? So I would say that is definitely number one. Once you get that done, then I would say an emergency savings would be second priority. So, and the reason I say that is because obvious reasons, that's important, but also I don't get the feeling that this all of a sudden the market is going to shoot, and I don't have a crystal ball either. I'm sort of sharing my feeling on it with you, but I don't get the feeling we're going to go back up to, the Dow being at, 29,000 tomorrow, right? I mean, companies already have, they lowered their expectations when this first started. And so they have already started putting out earnings reports, giving us a little bit of an idea how corporations are going to be affected. And we are definitely seeing effects into Q2, Q3 already, right? So there's going to be a little bit of it's not going to be as sharp of a curve, meaning that get your emergency fund created and then start to see how can you start to invest at that point.
And when you say invest at that point, would that be like setting up an IRA with an automatic contribution, or joining like Wealthfront? Are those some options that people would do?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it depends on, I mean, you can do, depending on your income range, you could do a Roth, or you could do a traditional IRA, or, if you have a business, you can do a SEP IRA. The first thing that I would do is I would, God, the information is out there. I would Google those. I would say, okay, should I do a blah, blah, blah? And it'll immediately come up and show you sort of where you fit within the spectrum. I think, yes, setting up an account with Vanguard or Fidelity or something like that, I would I would figure out where you fall in the spectrum first in terms of what type of account that you want to open. Then I would go and I would sign up with one of those in terms of opening an account. Now you'd mentioned Wealthfront. You could do that. That's a robo advisor. Elvest, those are really great too. And so really the biggest difference is like if you sign up with Vanguard or Fidelity or whatever, typically you're going to, people do that because they want to buy index funds. You can buy individual stocks, but people want to buy index funds and they want to actually set up their IRA. You can set up your IRA with Wealthfront and Elvest and all of that. They're a little bit more heavy in ETFs. And that's just a different way to buy things. Index funds, ETFs, I really wouldn't worry too much at this stage for a new investor about things like that. I think it's more important actually to get in there. And I think the most important concept to really go on right now is, we talked about this, in the group, Dana, which is dollar cost averaging. So you're going to want to, when markets are moving like they're moving now and how they're going to be, definitely we're going to see some movement coming up. You're actually, instead of trying to time the market, which that's the worst thing that you can do, you're going to want to take advantage of dollar cost averaging probably on a monthly basis. And all that really means is that once you figure out how much you can invest, and it's okay if it's $50, it's okay if it's $100, like we said, just get the process started, then set that, automate that. And so what you'll be doing is you'll be buying at different points in the market. And on average, that ends up giving you a better price historically.
I love that. Yeah. And I was going to ask, so automate, right? Mm-hmm. So make it so even if it's whatever amount it is that you feel comfortable once you've kind of gotten your ducks in a row, then just automate that so that you kind of learn to live without that, knowing that it's investing in your future.
Yeah, because it's interesting because we say live without that, but we're actually buying our future life effectively. If you look at I realized that I wanted to buy my way out of corporate. So when I was doing that, when I was going through that, because I lowered my cost of living substantially because I wanted to do it very quickly. And so I knew by making those adjustments, I wasn't like, the money wasn't going away. The money was actually being spent to buy a different type of life. And I think that if people can sort of adopt that they're actually getting something for it, because I think sometimes when we feel like money's going out of our account, I think we've been acclimated to feel like, money goes out of our account, then we're just paying bills. Well, this is definitely not a bill. This is like, buying your future, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. And going back to this whole energy of it as well, right? So I think that, if you look at it in terms of energy, like when we get a new idea, that energy feels really good, right? And then what happens is life comes in, and then we start to that energy starts to wane a little bit, right? We're like, oh, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, or blah blah blah. Well, I think what we're really trying to do ideally is we're always trying to figure out, well, how can we get our energy to match back up with that original energy that we felt when we got the idea, right? And so that's really effectively what we're trying to do when it comes to investing as well. We're trying to get our energy to match up with that purpose and that whole reason that we're investing in the first place. And if you can actually keep those and be constantly bringing your energy back to it, and one of the ways that you're doing that is you are committing to that, automated investing, right? You're staying integrity with that. You are you're putting yourself, every time you're investing that $100, you're getting yourself back into that energy zone of where you want to be in terms of your purpose and your future and your whole investing, the reason you're investing.
Ooh, that is so good. Yes, such a good reminder because it's like with anything, like, oh, this is so exciting. I'm learning this concept. I'm going to put this much aside every month for my future. And these are my goals, right? This is my vision. This is what my intuition is telling me is aligned for me. And then, like, you want to buy a new car and you're like, this sounds fun. And it's like the short term gratification versus that long term fulfillment. That's kind of what we're playing between. And there's no right or wrong, as you've taught us, but it's really holding that vision. And that's shifted everything for me. Just remembering, like, again, this is our life. Like, your life goes on. And how do you want to set yourself up so that you have not just the life you want now, but also, in 20 years, in 50 years, so that you can keep maintaining and, improving your quality of life.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, in terms of, I love that you brought up the buying a car example, because I think that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help people change the conversation in their mind. So let's just kind of walk through that. So let's say you walk into the car dealership, right? You're all excited about the car. And then what most people are thinking in their minds is, okay, well, here's how much the car costs and here's how much it is a month, right? So let's say it's $500 a month. Well, I think then a lot of people ask themselves, can I afford this $500 a month, right? Well, there, like you say, there's no right or wrong to that. That's not a bad conversation to have. But if we can actually help people ask a better question, because, you and I know, and our mentor tells us all the time that, the quality of your life is determined by the questions that you ask yourself. So if we can get people to instead ask the question, okay, this is $500. How does that factor into my purpose? How far, if we look at things in terms of a timeline, does that push me getting to my goal, my purpose? Mine would be saving horses. So is it worth it to me to push that out for 3 more years? And again, no right or wrong, right? But if I can ask that question, then that's a totally different question. But that comes from having that deeper connection with and really going down to that energetic level of your money. Does that make sense?
It does. And to me, what that does when you ask that question, it totally shifts it. It shifts it from, this is okay if I want this now, but does this align with my future? And it's a much more empowering question, because I know a lot of us think of, like, investing or, quote, budgeting it comes from a scarcity place. Like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't get this car because I can't afford it. And I'm not allowed to have it because I'm supposed to put money into my future investments. And that feels very disempowering and, like, frustrating. And then since we're all children at heart, we act out on that and then we get the car.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're asking it in the form of, like, well, does this serve the vision? Do I want to push this goal I have off 3 more years? And then that question totally shifts the energy, and it feels better. And you feel like you're making the decision again from that point of the original energy you had when you felt the idea.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so much more powerful because what it's doing is it's matching you back up with that energy. And it's a way to constantly be bringing ourselves back onto that wavelength almost.
Yeah, back to the path,
Yeah.
realigning with it, what we chose, checking if it's still what we want, and evaluating as we go.
Yeah. And, I'll, just real quick, I'll use myself as an example of a time when I chose to buy the car. So, but still stayed in alignment, right? So we'll kind of merge these two concepts together. So I think it was about, like, I don't know, maybe 6 years into my whole decade long, early retirement plan. I was really, really struggling. I was working 12-hour days on a trading floor. It was high security. I was just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pull a rabbit out of my hat and keep going with this. So anyways, I was studying for a financial exam at the time. And so I would work for 12 hours and then I would come home. I was studying 35 hours a week on top of that for financial exams. And so I only had 4 hours on Sunday to spend with my wife. It was crazy. So anyways, I was like, I cannot sit down and look at a computer when I come home. So I was walking around the neighborhood and I would walk for hours and have my headphones in. And I was just listening to the information, through my headphones. Well, I ended up walking by it was my neighbor. He lived like 3-4 blocks away and he had the most beautiful Airstream. And I've always loved Airstreams. I remember seeing them and they're just these eclectic, beautiful pieces of art to me, right? And so anyways, and I would walk by that and I would just be like, oh my God, that's beautiful. So then what I decided to do is when I walked by there, I would take my headphones out and I would literally get into full visualization mode. I would feel so happy. There would be this glow around the Airstream and I would imagine my wife and I going on trips and things like that. Before you knew it, the guy started coming out on his lawn and I got to know him. Then I started going inside of the Airstream. He was showing me around. Then we started talking about, I was literally manifesting this the whole way. Now, if I had just been basing this on a financial strategy, clearly an Airstream, buying that at that point, didn't fit in with my financial strategy and lowering my cost of living and all of that stuff, right? Yet there was no doubt in my mind that Airstream purchase was part of my purpose. And sure enough, it was a game changer. We ended up buying the Airstream and then my life became looking forward to the weekends where I would come home on Friday afternoon and my wife would have the whole thing ready to go. All of the coolers would be packed, the dog would be in there, and we would literally head out on Friday night. And that's what got me through. So even though I made the big purchase, that was fully aligned with my path.
Oh my gosh, total shivers. I love that so much because again, we're having an alignment conversation as it relates to finance and money. That's beautiful, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing that. And it just is a good reminder for us that, again, it's not black and white. We have to tune in. We have to tune in. We have to listen to our intuition. We have to check in. So often we're told a plan, we set a plan, and then it's like, well, this is the plan. Got to stick to the plan. But we have to be able to be flexible and find the flow and say, well, does this serve me at a higher level? Will this serve me moving toward my goals? Will this serve me in raising my vibration? And what you just described was, 100%.
Yeah, it is. It is. If you can do this, I keep going back to this game advantage. I think this is how people are going to make money in the future. I truly believe that. It is by building their financial intuition and to be able to ask questions like this. Because even after I bought the Airstream, you know what I did? I actually said, you know what? I feel so strongly about this Airstream. Maybe other people are feeling this way too. Because I was so into that world at that time. Honestly, I went out, I bought Airstream stock on top of that. I ended up making $10,000 from just the Airstream stock. I still have that dang stock.
Oh.
So it was you know what I'm saying? My being in alignment with my purpose, it was like a breadcrumb effect getting to that point, right?
I hope everybody heard that. When she was aligned with her purpose, it had a breadcrumb effect to everything else. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And, it brings me back because another question I had, but I think we kind of answered it is, if funds are kind of tight right now, right, and your world perhaps changed from where it was a month ago with your job, maybe you can't work. I'm thinking, different people that I've worked with, they can't work now, and how to manage the money now. Well, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this goes right back to your other steps, which was we first have to get our ducks in a row, because you couldn't have decided to purchase that Airstream if you didn't have an idea of what was going on and having your finances in order. So at least you understand, like, where is my money now? Where is it going out? Where, is it maybe being going out where I don't want it to? Where is it being invested, and how can I use it more effectively? I think for everyone, it sounds like kind of the first takeaway is we really have to have an understanding of this money dashboard and take the steps to get everything in one place, whether it's a spreadsheet or something like YNAB, and see where you're at. And then you can start making decisions once you have this platform in place.
Yes, you're exactly right. Because the concepts that we're talking about, this financial intuition, it won't be available to you until you make that first step. Right?
Yes. Oh, sorry. And I'm totally interrupting, but that is how I felt. Like, I liked all the concepts you talked about, but I was like, well, I'm too scared to look at my bank account.
Yes.
And so it was like that stuff, again, didn't feel attainable to me, because I was like, this, but I've just finished the process, or almost finished the process, of like combining my husband and my accounts. We had like 7 different bank accounts between us, 6 or 7 different credit cards, different bills coming off of, I had no idea where our money was going. And it was like, well, as long as we have enough to cover the bills, we're fine. But I had an underlying just fear and doubt of, like, from old money mindset of like, we don't have enough money. I need to make more money. I need to make more money. But then realizing, once I'm starting to combine and see where it goes, it's completely shifted my perspective. And I feel so much more calm about money.
Yes. And I love that. I love that you do, because, if you go back to like law of attraction, like if you don't have all of that set up, then what you're doing is you're blocking your ability to receive it. Right. So I think a lot of people go out there and they learn a lot about money mindset and they start feeling better about it, but then they're not actually setting up their ability to receive it, right? Because if you're going out there, you can actually feel the energy of money, and you can get really good at that, and you can create a vision board and you can walk by it every day. But if you're not actually setting yourself up to receive it, right? And one of the ways that people aren't setting themselves up to receive it is exactly what you just said. They're keeping their money at an arm's length distance because they don't want to look at it. Well, how do you think you're going to attract money if you're visualizing it, but then your subconscious is saying, I don't want to look at it, right? You're not. And so the best thing for anyone, even if you're, struggling right now and you're like, my gosh, how am I going to pay for things? And even if you're really affected by what's going on right now, the best thing that you can do is to set up your ability to receive money in a better way than it's ever been before. I see this as a huge opportunity for people to actually go really deep and say, let me set up the receiving side. And the way that I would do that is I would gamify it. I would, like you mentioned, YNAB, right? YNAB is a great way to get signed up for it. And no one likes to sit down and do that. But if you want to have a glass of wine at night and sit down and get your finances, or if you want to dance around and you want to put on great music or something, do something where you can commit to it and get into like a really good feeling place. So that's the external side of it. And then the internal side of it is you're actually improving your relationship with money by setting it up, because what you're saying to money is, okay, I am bringing you into my world, right? I am not going to keep you at the arm's length distance. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to look at you. I am going to level the playing field in terms of our relationship. And you lower your resistance with money when you do that, because we're only afraid of the things that we don't understand. Once we bring it in and we break it all down and we're like, okay, well, if I can't pay that bill, then it's not as bad as I thought it was, because I'm really only $100 short. And if I cut this thing out over here, which isn't really going to affect my life that much, then I'm actually fine. Those are the conversations that you get to have. And it sort of like opens your eyes to that.
Ah, yes. And what a perfect full circle, because we're bringing it right back to lowering the resistance in, building that trust and that willingness to pull back the curtain and to look at the things that we thought perhaps me as Joe Schmo, I don't get to access this. And in fact, this is available to all of us. And, when you pull the curtain back, it's so funny. Like, I can't think of a good metaphor, but it's like when you expect the boogeyman to be under your bed, so you freeze in bed and you don't want to check. And then when as a kid, mom and dad comes in, shines the flashlight. Well, there's nothing under there, and you feel so much more relieved because you saw it. And for me, I just had these like deep fears of, oh my God, all of these stories, and our minds love, they're drama queens. They are high school drama queens, and they love to create worst case scenario stories and then force you to live in them. And even if you're in a worst case scenario, the mind still has a tendency to make it way more dramatic. And that's scary. And it's hard to take action from that fearful, drama-filled place. And so, like you said, it's like if you actually look at it and it's like, okay, take a breath, open the bank accounts, and it's okay, it seems horrible, but I'm only $100 short. Or if I miss this bill, they're only going to charge me $10 so I can get back on track and skip this one bill. And it will, it's like you start to see solutions instead of fear and problems.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And, look at it more as like a game. Like, we've used the analogy like it's sort of like a chessboard. Look at it more like that. And these are just pieces that you get to move around. Stop looking at it like it's a conglomerate of bad decisions you've made.
Yeah, that's so nice, right? We have to be kind. Again, kind and compassion to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that applies to everything, and that's why I wanted Elizabeth on here, because it's like, this is a time where money is on everyone's mind right now. And that also means all of your money stories and habits are amplified.
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, here's the thing, like, even when we start building this financial intuition, like it's a lifetime process, So that doesn't mean that we're going to make every decision right? But it means that we're going to have a reason for decisions instead of just sort of reacting to our circumstances, right?
Yeah, it's so true. And I'm just going to recap real quick our little 3-step process that you gave, because I think for anyone who's here, whether you have, a ton of money or no money and wherever you are on the spectrum, I think what you said is such a good reminder is we've got to get our ducks in a row and set up a money dashboard and see what is happening and track it for 3 to 12 months. Then start working on your emergency savings, which I would imagine you would say is also something we should automate to build up that.
Yes.
And then you can start to determine which is the best way for you to start investing, whether it's an IRA, a Roth IRA, you can Google that, and start even a very small amount, $50 a month, whatever, to start getting in the practice and habit of it. Automate those investments. And then you can use all of that to help fund your purpose and your why, and getting really aligned and intuitive about what it means for you to have, wealth. What does wealth mean to you in your life and in your future? And use the really practical steps to build the future that you want and stay connected to that why, to maintain that lifestyle for yourself.
Yes, that's exactly right. And the stronger you can make that why, the more you're going to attract, right? Because you're opening up that gate. And once you've got the receiving end all, you've got your dashboard set up, there's really nothing stopping that, because what's that's doing is, like we talked about before, it's taking you back to that strong energy level. It's taking you back to that feeling like, everybody knows how great it feels when we have a good idea, or something just comes to us. We just feel so energized, right? And so by having that set up, the stronger you can make that, the faster it's going to come.
That's so beautiful. Anything else to end on?
other than just thank you for having me here. I feel so honored to talk to you and your audience. And I hope that this has given some not only direction right now, but, I guess if I did leave anyone with anything, it would be the way that we have seen investing in the past is not the way investing is going to look in the future. And so, if you truly want to be an investor and you want to build wealth for you and your family, then the stuff that Dana just said, those 3 steps, that is a must, and do that as soon as possible. But that's only the beginning. That's just setting you up for the race. That's just like getting you in position to go for the run, right? The run is actually going to be the part that is so fun. And once you're positioned for it, you're going to see opportunities that have come up in ways that you've never seen before. And it makes sense, right? Our entire world is changing. It's looking different. And so why would it not look different in terms of our investing? It's going to.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. And everyone, so Elizabeth, you've heard some of her nuggets of wisdom. We're only scratching the surface. You share. So first of all, the program that I joined, I know it's not open yet, Elizabeth, but I think you said there's a wait list. It's called Financial Story. And it really helps you get your ducks in a row and really learn the basics of finances. And I literally could not recommend it more. I'm so grateful that I took that program as we kind of entered into this new phase of being. How can people find you on Instagram, on Facebook, and how can they get on the wait list for your program?
Yeah, so the wait list is myfinancialstory.com. And so they can jump on that. I'm going to open it here in about 4 weeks. I'm going to do another round of it. And then they can find me on Instagram, just both Facebook and Instagram, just by my name at Elizabeth Ralph. We also have a Facebook group we have a free Facebook group called Financial Story. So if anyone's interested in that as well. I love questions. So, jump in there, ask me questions. Feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. I just love talking to people about this stuff. And, everyone asking me questions helps me as well, because it sort of keeps me in the energy of you guys and what you need and how I can better bring this information forward in a more strategic way that helps you guys.
And it's true. She's great at questions. She's an Enneagram 5. Gretchen Rubin, you're a questioner as well, from Gretchen Rubin's scale. And I can attest, guys, asked so many questions, and she's so good at answering them. And again, if finances feel at all scary to you, Elizabeth is the person to work with, because she'll just even if you're following her on Instagram, she will help you shift your perspective so it feels more empowering. It feels more doable for you, regardless of where you're at. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's been a treat to have you and your wisdom on this show.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, this has been amazing. I so appreciate it.
I love it. Until next time, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans, or find me on my website at alignful.com.